It-
And we are recording.
Welcome to Fantasy Island, where two monks and a midget named Hervé swing both ways. We're glad you're here. We're glad that you're part of our channel. We're glad that you're part of our conversation. As always, click the like, click this, just subscribe. You got something you want us to know? Write in the comments. Email Aurora at 1 a.m. She loves that. And just let us know what's on your mind. Otherwise, we're just going to keep talking and you're going to keep listening. So if you want it to be a two-way conversation, let us know. Arthur is going to lead our discussion. Arthur, what's on your mind today? Guide us.
You know, you know, I've been walking and thinking, and as usual, you come to mind. Thankfully, it's not in bed, so it's a good thing that it was only walking. But I go back to the first time we actually met in person and the first discussion we actually ever had. And there's something you said, in fact, it was probably the second sentence you said to me when we met, is the key in life is not to be a dick.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I love that. I love that phrase. Obviously, it stuck with me because I remember it after all these years. But then I go back and I start thinking, what exactly does that mean? And more importantly, what did Lao mean? Right? And I'm curious to get your take on it. And maybe we can slide some Tao under the covers over there and maybe add to it.
Stranger in the sleeping bag.
Right.
Okay.
A little reach around.
Pleasant. Very pleasant. It's like this. 9 times out of 10, when you have somebody who's terse, right? We already did the podcast on unreasonable or difficult people, but 9 times out of 10, when you find someone who is terse or surly in their normal disposition, you can trace it to one thing: they're not getting their needs met. Well, it's okay when you're not getting your needs met to communicate, hey, I need my needs met. It's not okay to do the interpretive dance, sort of Juilliard acting out fashion that we're all supposed to somehow fucking know. Oh, this person is asking for, because most people are very busy. We were having this discussion last night, sort of a study group that I lead on symbology, just all sorts of symbology. But one of the things was that they were saying, well, why do you think the world is so out of balance? And I said, it's not out of balance. It's completely in balance. It's just the revolutions that we're going through is a much higher RPM than before. If you did one or two things, you were successful. Now you're doing 10 things half-assed, 3/4 of your day you're over caffeinated, you're a neurotic mess. There's no downtime, there's no ebb. It's constantly flow, flow, flow. If you're not efficient, you're gonna lose your job. If you're not efficient and keeping up with every ups and downs and whims of your significant other, you're losing your job. I mean, and so it's just a neurotic mess because there's too many revolutions per hour, right?
Whereas before, right? I mean, you could be doing the same thing your father did and your grandfather did and your great-grandfather did, and you'd be doing the same thing and nothing would change for thousands of years.
Exactly. And so, there's pros and cons to everything, but when you speed up as a civilization, as a species, we've never been this fast. So this is why we're having all the social media and having all the problems that aren't really problems. They're not bugs, they're features. This is just what happens, and we're just now coming to know them because we've never lived this fast before. So anyways, so in that, it's like if you're driving, let's say you two live 95, right? That runs up and down the East Coast. So if you're on 95 going south and you decide to just haul ass and hit it at 125 miles an hour, you're that little broken white line, it's going to disappear. It's just going to be one solid line. You lose space, you lose time.
And you get a tunnel vision, right? You get tunnel vision where your peripheral goes out the window.
Absolutely. And so you lose time, you lose space, and then you're rushing around. Well, when you do that, the things that generally get sacrificed are your foundations, right? Eat, drink, rest, relax, sleep, play, intimacy, as well as your needs: certainty, variety, significance, connection, growth, contribution. You lose them. Those are what's going to be sacrificed. But those are the things you can't sacrifice because it's in fact the foundations of who you are. When people are not getting their foundations and their needs, the resultant quotient, if you look at high energy particle physics, is that the Dick quotient goes up. And it's an exponential. It's Dick squared times QRS. And it's a whole mathematical thing. And in order to get the Dick to Dick ratio down so that the D2F or the Dick to floor ratio goes up, and thereby lowering the Dick, it's math, people. It's just math. I can't help it. It's just math. Because math. So, anyways, that's what being a dick is. Don't be a dick, meaning you want something, communicate it. If you're being a dick, you're communicating it, but it's going to have the opposite effect because people are going to be less likely to help you or want you to get your needs because you're a dick.
So an easy example, right, I think would be if you're ordering some food at a restaurant, right? And a lot of people have a bad habit of being dicks to the people who are bringing them food.
Yes.
Right? And that's bad for multiple reasons.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Number one, you can get your food spit on.
That's
right?
Facts.
Number two, let's assume that doesn't happen, right? Let's assume your waiter is not a llama and doesn't like to spit and everything. And the thing that's going to happen, right, is as this person is carrying this tray to you, your food to you, right? They're going to be thinking bad thoughts about you. And that energy is going to translate into your food. Right? So you're going to get your dick handed back to you.
So have we established now publicly that llamas swallow or spit? Because there's a bunch of llamas in Dharamsala that I would love to let them know that as a Taoist consensus, we believe that llamas spit. Now, I don't know if the Dalai Lama, I don't know if he's out of that category, but all the other llamas, apparently they spit. Arthur said so. I heard it. Check it.
I meant the furry kind, but
what? You know what? Don't carve the block. Don't carve the block. Shh. Not too.
Let's get back to the dick.
Not too.
Aurora, it's your job to keep us focused. Can we get back to the dick, please?
I'm just enjoying letting you guys just talk about your dicks and spitting and swallowing.
Being a dick is not gender specific.
Well, obviously.
Well, of course, it's a social construct, haven't you heard?
Don't dick explain to me, okay?
Well done. I'm coining that. Let's get that on a t-shirt.
Well, my t-shirt is I'm just a wizard girl living in a muggle world.
Yes, you are.
I am.
Yes, you are.
Trying to deal with some dicks.
I mean, there's worse things, I suppose, you could be dealing with, but yeah. No, but you're 100% right. It goes into your food, and then the butterfly effect, right? It just ripples outward from there.
Right.
But why does that happen? Why do people do that to their waiters? Well, they're hungry, obviously, and they probably went too far neglecting basic body chemistry, which is glucose low, hangry high. It's just, I mean, it doesn't take a genius.
And also they're suppressing all these emotions, right? Yep. So you go around each day, your needs are not being met. You suppress that. You suppress. It's just the same thing as being tense. So like you talk about ebb and flow, right? You can talk about it tense, relax, right? If your needs aren't being met, you suppress. That fist inside you gets tighter and tighter and tighter. So there's only one thing you can communicate.
You too.
You can't not love talking to Arthur.
That's really why you guys just keep talking and you always end up at the same place.
See, as Taoists, we always want to go back to foundations.
Yes, we do.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
Well, we build and build and build and build on the foundations. When the foundation is stable and is able to support us, we can build on top of it.
Yeah, you can't make a palace on a sandstone foundation, it's got to be bedrock, and that
Right.
bedrock is eating and all those things. And interesting is that we know we need to eat, and we don't eat often enough, or if the stuff we eat, it's terrible for us. So it goes up too high, too fast, and then crashes too fast. It's unstable, but it's quick, and it's mouth sex when you're eating it but it's not really sustaining. It's not nourishing. It's not. You got to learn your own blood type. You got to learn your own body chemistry, like all those things. And people want to put less thought into that than what their hair bag, their handbag and their shoes are going to match. It's like, but this has an effect because those foundations have way more to do with what you think people think of you than what you're trying to project with Versace belt and all this kind of thing. It's like, yeah,
So what you're
you're
talking
a
about is
dressed mess.
a dick prevention plan,
Yeah.
and and what I'm hearing is that when we move into our dickhood place, we're unconscious in a way, like we've sort of lost conscious with our body, with our feelings, what's really going on, and we're just going on impulse, and then we act out.
Right, biology impulse though, right? We're not even
Yeah,
going on like
exactly.
executive function. And this is why Poe is a tiger, and and Hun is a dragon, and Poe's like, look, you give me plenty of food and scratch my belly, I'm a happy kitty cat.
Oh, happy, yeah.
But you starved me at jazz.
Well, I know in myself, being a man and actually internalizing a lot of things as far as stress, it gets to a point where I can no longer actually communicate. It becomes impossible for me. Even if I want to, even if I want to with my wife, even if I want to with people, I open my mouth and nothing comes out, right? So well, what I've learned so far in my life, at least, and again, this works for me, it doesn't mean it will work for you, but it works for me, is I have to go on at least a 20-minute walk. For some reason, the 20-minute mark is the right amount of time for me to actually begin to start to hear some of my own words come out of my mouth. And then it gets easier and easier and easier.
And
And
I could tell you, like, just from a yogic perspective, the part of that is that, when you walk or you move your arms, you're working both sides of the brain. And I think that, when we become dicks, right? We start to like lose the ability to balance and be harmonious. So that's one of the reasons. And also, being out in nature starts to feed the liver, starts to calm the liver down, because the liver feeds off of plants, and look, being able to look at those things, and water too. Seeing water, seeing anything in nature, smells, all of those things. So that makes a lot of sense, Arthur, to do that, which is such an easy thing to do. Just to think about it.
Interesting story. If you look at incense sticks, they're usually the small ones, and then there are large ones. The small ones last 20 minutes. The large one lasts 60 minutes. 20 minutes to a Taoist is a unit of time called one whole, H-O, one whole. And so when you do a 20-minute meditation, for example, one stick, that's actually an interesting thing neurochemically and neurophysiology. Let's say you're reading a book, or you're involved in something, and then someone comes in and takes your attention. It will take you 20 minutes to get back to the same neural pattern that you were when you were in deep,
Wow.
sort of theta alpha concentration. And so 20 minutes is it's biologically and neurologically a very important time, because it takes, brain chemistry doesn't move as fast, and you don't want it to, or else you'd be irascible, high order. And
And
people
you're
who,
talking about the theory of the three, right? Because
yeah,
it's like a third of an hour, right?
right, right,
And
yeah,
and there is, I think scientifically, isn't there a biorhythm that every 20 minutes? So like very often, if I have to write or I have to do something I don't want to do, I set the timer for 20 minutes,
mhm,
just so that, when that goes off, usually I'm involved in it by that point. But
yeah.
it's like there's something about that 20 minutes that's really effective.
Interesting. Even when you take a nap, like for people who are like, I don't want to take long naps, 26 minutes is the ideal time. So that
Totally.
general 6 minutes is just getting down. And then there's 20 minutes when you wake up, you're
absolutely.
fresh and ready to go.
I call that like starting over the day. Like if I
Yeah.
can take a 20-minute nap, it's like that's now I've got a new day. I've got a whole day ahead of me. But if I take an hour nap, I wake up and I'm like, where the fuck am I? What time is it? I am so disoriented. So the 20 minutes is like it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. And these are all antidotes. But it's interesting story that people ask me all the time, Lao, um, would you be willing to do like a consult where we can go over all of my stuff so that I can be maximizing my, time with Tao? I'm like, what do you do all day? Do you have a job? You need a job. Get a job. Get a dog. And the reason why is they want to do arbitrary things that they think are more Taoy or more Tao oriented. And it's like going poop is Tao oriented. Eating a good meal is Tao oriented. Going for a walk is good Tao oriented. Good sensual touch for yourself to really get out of your head, like Arthur's constantly saying, get into your body, give yourself a foot rub, but, and do it sensually, you know, there's a lot of things that can happen and people, they live here. So this is all disconnected. And if you stay in that sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight constantly, without the getting the rest and digest of the parasympathetic saturation, then what happens is all the blood leaves your viscera in a sympathetic. It leaves your viscera and it goes to your extremities. It goes to the back part of the brain. So the viscera and the front part of the brain becomes empty.
Yeah. They go
If you're
offline,
starving.
basically.
And so you're not in your body. And this is why people are like, well, I should do Tai Chi or I should do Qigong. It's like, I mean, that's great. I'm not saying you shouldn't. If you want to wave your hands, wave your hands. I like watching Marcel reenactments. It's great. But is that really practical? If say if you're a DMV or if you're at exactly, she's getting me. She's doing a golden ball qigong right here. Right. But it's like, and there's nothing wrong with it except for, and like if you've got discretionary time, it's a great memory aid, right? The Taoists say intention leads the mind, mind leads the breath, breath leads to chi, chi leads to magic. Well, yeah, but this is like a training wheels. It's good, but you need to be able to pattern that breathing so you can do that. So you don't look like a crazy person in a boardroom having a conversation going,
Yeah. So it's interesting. You bring up a really really good point there, Lau. I remember Eckhart Tolle had a student come to him and say, "What workshop do you think I need? Something very similar." And he said, rather than go to a workshop, just watch your breath all day long.
yeah,
Just be really aware of your breath.
yeah,
And again, coming to a number three, if you set your timer for 3 minutes and just watch your breath and just breathe. And there's a zillion different breathing exercises that you can do. You can do spinal breathing, you can do alternate nostril breathing, you can just watch the breath, you can count the breath, it doesn't matter. But you'll change in 3 minutes. You will be a different person in 3 minutes. Something will have shifted. It doesn't take that long with the breath.
no,
So what comes up for me listening to you guys, and this is the way I interpret it or the way I try to communicate it to students, is when you're too much in your head, right? When you're too much thinking everything, you lose trust with your body.
very much. Very
That
much.
handshake, that mind-body connection, you start to weaken it. And your body loses trust with you. Don't think your body is just there without thinking. Your body has an intelligence of its own,
Yes.
right? The organs have an intelligence of their own.
Yep.
The communication system, it's all working all the time, right? And if you lose trust with that, what's going to happen? The body's like, well, I'm not needed here anymore. See you later.
Yep.
Right? And bad things start to happen.
Yep. If you think about it like a tiger, if you gain your tiger's trust, even when it's irascible, it'll give you signals like, hey, not right now. And you listen to it and you gain its trust and you hold its trust. That way, when it's in this prey mode, it's got the prey drive, it's not hunting you.
Mhm.
If you have an antagonistic relationship, like, well, I'll put you in a cage, I'll whip you, I'll medicate you, it's going to look for ways to subvert you because you're not its ally, you're its tyrant.
You don't have to look for a dictator outside of ourselves. Our minds are really, really.
Right? That's a phenomenal way of looking at it, actually. You're absolutely right.
But this is why Poe, because he is an intelligence in and of himself, is given these attributes, where Hun is given the dragon, and the tortoise or the snake for Jur. Like these are given there. And if you really think about it, you need to think about, if Jur is the will, and you can say it's a snake. If I'm afraid of a snake, are you afraid of your will? Mm-mm. How do you use your will? How much of your authority do you hold? How much of your authority do you hand over? Right? These are all important ideas because they're not hard. People go, well, like, so I heard that the tiger lives in your lungs. I'm like, if you had an actual tiger in your lungs, that would be rather awkward, don't you think? But it's a concept. It's an archetypical concept that you're supposed to take it out and, like Aesop's fables, extract ideas from it. That's all you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to go, well, I happen to know that tigers only live 7 years. Calm down, Crutchy. Calm down. It's an archetype. It's an idea. Use it to make a plan of, if this was an actual tiger.
7 years. Is that
Was
true?
that in the wild, they can live a long time if they have available resources and all, but due to disease, predation, etc., you're probably going to average about 7 years. I think lions are the same or relative. Of course, some live longer, some live shorter. It is just an average. But why? Because it's a predator. And so think about all of the things that beset it, right? But in the same way with the body, age is constantly predating your predator. But you know, the ravages of free radicals, all of those things. So, but do you have the best coping mechanisms to deal with those things? And many people, I see people with their dogs, because I got dogs, and these dogs were out there and they're just doing all fifi, you're just the most amazing thing, and here's your little glucosamine treat, and here's your CBD, and I'm like, I mean, that's
Great to be a dog nowadays, really.
Right?
Totally.
But at the same time, when you look at the way they treat themselves, they're neglectful assholes.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, first, how dare you? Because, and people sometimes say, well, if it's something, and I get this a lot, especially when I deal with students or clients, they'll go, oh, but I'm nice to everybody. I mean, I'm not very nice to myself, true, but I'll work on that. But I'm nice to people, myself, other people. And I'm like, if you're a dick to yourself, you don't realize it, but you're a dick to other people. That's it. That's all there is to it.
The best thing you could do for others is to take care of yourself, put
It's
that
the most selfless thing you can do.
Yeah.
So the image that I get, because I'm very visual, like to imagine these things and everything. The vision that I got when Lao was talking, and especially when he told me this in the beginning, is that you're like a porcupine, right? When you get into the state of being a dick, you're like a porcupine, but instead of these needles, you got dicks sticking out all over the place.
Absolutely.
Right?
And that's
So-
your image.
Right. So as you're walking down the street, or as you're talking to people, one of these dicks is definitely getting hit and everything. But basically, so what you want to do is remove these needles, so you're smooth, so you can basically glide through life, right? Without life sinking its hooks in you, because it doesn't see you, it doesn't notice you, right? Like Lao was talking about dancing between the raindrops. Right, but dancing, walking, I don't know what you were doing.
Walking between the raindrops.
Walking between the raindrops and everything. And the reason I like that image is because it's so horribly, real. Like you can imagine yourself being full of these needles, these dicks, and everything. So work on yourself, right? Lao once talked about, and I don't remember which episode it was, that we treat the ones closest to us the worst. Right? We're out there in the world, we treat everybody great, and then we come home and we don't pay attention to our family. But here's how bad it gets. You think it's like, okay, whatever, you treat the closest ones the worst, or whatever, they'll deal with it. Who's the closest one to you? Like Lau just said, you, right? So if you follow that pattern, if you treat the ones in your cocoon the worst, the ones you love the most, well, then you're, by extension, treating yourself the worst.
Yeah, but that's why you treat the people closest to you worst. They're getting the residual of the asshole you are to yourself. They're just getting the residual. They're a casualty. They're a collateral damage. You know what I mean?
Right.
So Stephen Covey has what he calls 4 quadrants. There's things that are important and an emergency.
Mm.
There are things that are not important but are an emergency. Then there are things that are important but not an emergency. And then there are things that are not important and not an emergency. And he always says that people live in the second and the fourth quadrant. So they're dealing with putting out a lot of fires. They're not important, but they're an emergency. Like you have to make that phone call right now. You have to do that. Or they're living in not important, not an emergency. I'm just going to binge watch Netflix for the next 3 days, because I've been overworking, right? But the one that everybody, and then what's important and an emergency, those get taken care of, right? Because they're on the top of your list. But what's important and not an emergency has to do with taking care of yourself, being with your family, the things that are really your values, the things that are your principles that you want to, the life that, the abundance life that you want to live, which gets pushed aside because you're rushing around trying to put out fires or trying to take care of everyone else instead of taking care of yourself.
100%. And and in terms of being like gender specific, you have
Does that mean that we can have a different visualization of the dick model that Arthur gave us?
Yes.
Okay.
In terms of gender, women generally justify or rationalize to themselves why they don't take care of those needs and those foundations, because I've got to take care of other people. And it's like, you're not taking care of other people. This is why you find women that are they're feeling guilty all the time. They're feeling resentful or bitter. They're feeling unappreciated. I knew a mom. She used to bring her daughter to me when I was doing acupuncture. The daughter was 17 years old, but looked like she was 10. She hadn't hit puberty really. There was no secondary sex characteristics that really marked her as becoming a woman. She looked like a child. And I used to listen to the mom rant to me, well, she's premature. Well, she's premature. Well, she was premature. I was like, Jesus Christ, could you get any more shit heaped on the premature wheelbarrow? I mean, come on, man. So by the end of it, I told her, I said, well, let me ask you a question, and maybe you can help me with this. To me, there's something after the last 2 years of listening to you talk about it, there's something here with premature. Would you say, like, wow, I mean, it affects so much. Oh, of course it does. Of course it does. Of course it does. So were you premature? Oh, I don't know. Something tells me you were, based on how you behave in the world, if I'm going by your premise. I said, but let me ask you something. Did your mom? She's like, oh, my mom was amazing. But does she walk around running guilty and feeling like a ragged asshole all the time over it? Or does she get the fuck on with it? And she was like, well, you're trying to show your daughter you care by making yourself a fucking train wreck. How does this help you or your daughter? Your daughter's not even remotely near growing up because you never let her stop being a little girl because you're trying to make a martyr of a mommy. It's not good for you. It's not good for her. When she goes and leaves you eventually to go into the world, she's going to be away from you because you're keeping her ineffectual, because you're ineffectual. Using good mommy as your little shield, not okay. Because then you never realize you never became a woman you wanted to be. You never became who you should have been because you were hiding in the mommy role. And she was just like, I don't say I'm hiding. I'm like, what would you call it? Go ahead. Were you obscured? Were you playing hide and seek? What would you call it? I said, because you can't tell me one thing right now. I've never heard anything that you actually do for yourself because you want to as a woman. She's like, well, you can't when you're a mom. I'm like, I can't argue with a fool who knows they're right. So there's no more conversation here. It's a cop out. I know that raising kids, I got savages. Trust me. I know that raising kids takes a lot of time. And I do know that. We always seem to want to make kids, and even teachers with students, I see this all the time when people do this with their students and they come and they're talking about, wow, I want to do this with my students. And it's like, listen, you're being contrived. You're doing your way. Students need to see one thing. They need to see you life. They don't need to hear about how many buttons in the Tang Dynasty and how many flower blossoms were coming out of the hair of the royal. Nobody gives a flying fuck. All right, calm down. you're obfuscating the real thing, which is, I don't know how to life life. You supposedly know how to life life. I need to see you lifing your life, and then my mirror neural system will follow your mirror neural system, and I will then learn commensurately. So if you have teachers who know it but never done anything, most of their students will always seem confused. But teachers who actually done the thing, the two students almost never be confused because the teacher can transmit that because they've done it.
So I have personal experience with this with my two kids. And, you know, there comes a time when you really have to stop being a mom. You really have to, you know, take another role. And there was a period where both of my kids, who have always had really good relationships with, started. I was so upset because I could just feel that I was doing something wrong, and they were really pissed off at me. And I was so upset that I actually Googled, why do my kids hate me? I actually Googled that, and I actually found out that there were 10 reasons. Okay. And I had done all of them, and they really all had to do with basically, you know, getting in their business and not letting them move on, and not seeing that they were growing up and that they were independent. And when I stopped doing all those things, my relationship really changed with both of them. And I've also really seen that the more I do things in my life, the more, you know, when I first started doing, you know, some different like work, you know, in my life, I noticed that my kids would just model some of it. And then they would go on to do, you know, other things. And now I watch them and I try to model them, because some of the things that they do are pretty amazing. But it's more like you're talking really about modeling the behavior that you want for other people, rather than trying to get them to do the things that you think that would be best for them.
Exactly. That's why when Arthur teaches like Tai Chi or Qigong, he talks little and he does it. He just sits there and does it in front of them. He lives it. You can't say, I don't know, maybe Arthur doesn't really practice. Look at his goddamn life. Have you seen somebody who gives less of a fuck and still is functional and successful? I don't know that many people like that.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. It's funny, actually, Aurora, you were talking, and what brought to my mind is the conversation I had a little while ago with a person who was looking to whether to get divorced or not, right? And I asked, well, what kind of relationship do you have with your spouse? And well, we don't have a relationship. We don't really communicate. We fight a lot. And I said, well, why are you in this marriage? Are your needs being met? No. Okay, why are you in this marriage? Well, for the kids. I said, well, then you're doing exactly the opposite. Why? Because your kids will model their relationship based on what they see your relationship is like, whether you like it or not. And since you can't stay in this marriage and have a good relationship, model the right one to your kids, what you're doing is exactly the opposite of your intentions.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
point.
But that isn't that Tao. If you go deep enough into yin, what do you find? You know, everything that you're trying to avoid, you're creating by avoiding it. Everything you're trying to create, you will create the antithesis first. It's as simple as that. You're right. If you want to go east, you cannot go east until you get west. And the reason why, it's a circle. You'll just keep going forever and ever and ever. Where the hell will east be? You got to define west first. Everything you want is on the other side of the things you're trying to avoid. You're trying to, you know, lie to yourself. You're trying to convince you or rationalize yourself. Right? Everything is on the other side. And because of that, you can't, people trying to say, well, I only want this and I don't want any of this. It's like, well, good fucking luck with that. But that's not how the Tao works. So if you want a successful marriage, for example, a guy, I love him to death. I met him about 6 months ago. Him and his wife, very loving. They got 3 kids. He's a very serious dude, you know, serious, a man. He does a lot of man workshops and all. And I just think the world of him. He's the sweetest thing in the whole world. A little serious, but I usually come and lick his face or something, and we break down. Well, what? Anyways, so, anyways, we were kind of having a discussion because he introduced me to somebody who was also does a lot of these men's workshops. And he was talking about 6 years ago, him and his wife were like, I'm done. I hate you. I was like, wow, how's your relationship now? He's like, it's amazing. I'm like, yeah, because you hate each other. You cannot start a marriage and just keep it amazing forever. There's a point where you're gonna have to hate each other, or else you can't really love each other. Because the love you have in the beginning ain't love. It's oxytocin, it's hormones, it's neurotransmitters, it's
It's fantasy and
biology.
hope, you
What's
know.
that?
It's fantasy and hope. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what we do, you
And
know.
on top of biology, right? Because biology's like gonna smash those haplogroups. But then to really get to know the person, the reason why you have to hate them is you got to get to the point where you start seeing they're holding your mirror. It ain't them, it's your mirror. And the only reason why you even involve them in it is because you see their fingers holding the mirror. You're like, oh, see, if you weren't showing me that, I wouldn't be this way. It's like, I'm sorry, you live with it, man. But you got to get to that point because then you start to realize it was me. It was me the whole time. And then you can start making changes because if it's you can change it. If it's her or them, you can't change it, right? You can only change it if it's you. And you can only do that if you start to understand you, in fact, are a dick. There's just no other way around it. You're a dick. You're an asshole to yourself. You're an asshole to the use of your imagination, right? Worry is just the worst use of the imagination. You're terrible to your body with your dysmorphic way of shoulds. You're iron fist, I am virtuous. I know what the world needs. And like knowing anybody that comes within the sound of my voice, if you give them absolute power, we are all fucked. Because they think they know the trajectory of every soul pattern, how it should be. And then they're going to sit there and talk about, I hate fascists. It's like, oh, Jesus.
You want to change the world, but you can't even change yourself.
Well, because if I change the world, then I don't have to change myself because I've nerfed all the round edges, the sharp edges, right? John Cleese is an amazing Taoist because he's like, I am not for censorship in any way, simply because censorship says I can't control how I feel and I'm not going to. So I got to control all of your actions so that I don't have to control the way I feel. And it's so true. But this is why marriages go, but it's such a beautiful thing. If you look at every mystery tradition, the Norse, the Greeks, whatever, all the stories that God, of whatever ilk and the archetype for that story is, takes some sort of carnage, and out of that carnage creates Genesis. Right? The Norse, you got the giant sleeping in the ice, and Vili and Ve and Odin rip him apart, and his bones become the mountains, and his blood becomes the oceans, and his the flesh and muscles become the land, right? And you get the same thing. Brahma, right, destroys his body and throws it. It's out of carnage. And so if your marriage, I don't say you have to be like the War of the Roses type thing, but if your marriage or your relationship gets extremely terse, and that's generally at the 7-year mark, then you're like, okay, good, wonderful. Now you can start making a real relationship based on who are you and where does your dick quotient come in? Where does her dick quotient come in? And now, how do you Venn diagram them so that you hit the best versions of yourself? And that's where you get. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that I really like to look at it this way because I think that, there are many spiritual paths, right? And I think marriage is a definite spiritual path. And if you look at it as a spiritual path, and I love, Byron Katie always says it only takes one person to have a good relationship. And I've really found that to be true in my life, in all of my relationships. If I take care of my side of the street and I don't expect anyone else to make me happy, I can have a good relationship with that person. But the minute I think, okay, you're the reason I'm unhappy and you need to do this to make me happy, then I've really actually stepped out of my spiritual path because now someone else has got a lot more power over me and over my emotions and over, like they've got to write the Bible for me, and have that, for me. But I think too that, having so many relationships with fantasy characters, which we do, we grow up with them, right? And so, we think, okay, somebody's going to come and they're going to look perfectly and they're going to sound perfectly and they're going to make me feel good about myself, and we're going to go off, into the distance and, have a beautiful, wonderful relationship, and our kids will come and they'll be perfect and everything will be perfect and we'll just have lived this perfect life. And when none of that happens, and when you start to see the reality of a person, there can be almost this sense of like, you deceive me, I thought you were this, and what you really are is this. And maybe, maybe we do deceive each other a little bit, in the beginning, because we're all trying to be like super, like, I go put makeup on in the morning so you don't see it. I don't have eyelashes or something like that, all the things that we do. And then little by little, after 7 years, those have all just come down, and I'm just wearing a gross t-shirt to bed. And, there's not any of that romance left. But that's like the real person, and living with reality and with a real person. But that's where I think, actually, if people, and I've seen people do it again and again, if you get over that hump, you find something that you would never have before. You will find some kind of love that you'd never have ever get before, because you went through the fire with someone. You went through the belly of the whale with someone.
Yeah, and it's absolutely true. I typically find that people aren't really trying to be deceptive, but you have genes working in the beginning, you have neurotransmitters, and they don't give a fiddle or a fig about anything considered moral or social. They know one thing: how do I replicate and move the damn ball down the road? That's all it cares about. And that's why you have less, and that's generally typically why people are the way they are up until about 30. Sometimes they get married and sometimes they don't. And most people, it's just the biology of, I want a steady way to keep reproducing.
Mhm.
And it sounds not all that romantic, and I know Disney doesn't like to make stories about this, but it's really true. But the deception would come in as if there was intent, and there's no intent, because simply you don't know. I mean, it takes probably 7 years for you to get serious neural patterns built up so that you can actually start doing the work. I'm pretty sure that almost everybody who gets involved in a relationship is doing with the best intention. People would come to me because, as an abbot and the priest, people would say, would you perform our wedding? I'm like, fuck no, are you stupid? No way. I ain't marrying you two. You two are, I don't even know if you belong in the same hemisphere. You guys work with me for 6 weeks and I'll make a decision. But I'm not signing my freaking name to a losing proposition. That's just lame. That's my karma. No thanks. I'm down. And so I would work with them, and I would be like, okay, so what makes you even think that you deserve to be with each other? I'd be like, well, I mean, just, things like for example, the other day he came home and I was really hungry and I was really down, and he had gotten a pizza and I didn't know that. I didn't ask him for it, but it had everything I wanted on it. It was like synchronicities. I'm like, are you are you ill? Do you need meds? Are you mad? What? What? Well, I mean, just I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it was still special to me. I was like, all right. So basically, I'm dealing with mentally handicapped people. I said, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to a bar. I want you to go to a bar with them. I don't want you to act like you know each other. Walk in separately. You go sit at one side, you sit at the other. I want him. You choose a woman that you want him to go make the moves on. And you're going to go watch him make the moves on her. He doesn't have to sleep with her. He doesn't have to go home with her. But he's got to put the moves on. He's got to be that charming self. Because you need the objectivity to know what he's doing to you. And you need to know what's kind of like, whoa, he doesn't do this normally. But now he did. Because he's going to be put, and he's too dumb because he's a dude. So he doesn't know the personas he's using, because his biology is like, he's an idiot. I'll take care of this. And you're going to watch him. And in that time frame, you're going to see all the insecurities. You're going to feel every centimeter around your waist. You're going to feel every extra pound. You're going to feel all those things. And then afterwards, you're going to go and you're going to have a real conversation about how he felt, about how you felt, and you're going to make a decision whether or not you can really do this or not. You can't lie, because if you lie, it's going to come out in your divorce. I said, because let's say you're 25 years old and you get in a relationship, you could ostensibly live with that person 60 years easily. With today's medicine, easily 60 years. What do you think is going to happen in 60 years? Think about our society. What was it 60 years ago? And now look at it today. Any changes anywhere? Anyway? Yeah. What do you think it's going to be with you, with you two retards? No, crazy no. So if you're talking about, I'm going to buckle up and be with this person forever, you're going to be with every part of this person. He or she is going to look at other people. It's just going to happen. It's biology. You're gonna go through this whole thing. If you don't have a plan to deal with it, and you try to be like, well, when come to it, I'll deal with it. Too late now, because too many boundaries have been crossed. Too many things have been already. Trust has been lost. You gotta approach this as a real thing. This is 60 years minimum, and
You're talking about like absolutely accepting, like one of the things for me in my path is really accepting men for who they are, and really accepting women for who they are, not the fantasy of who I want them to be. And I think part of that fantasy was that, the prince came and you were the only person they ever wanted, and it was it was the only one. And it's so unrealistic. And we talk about men just being a dick, like that's another way you could say, is because they're going to look at other women and you're just like, how dare you, like how could you possibly um, do that to me, right? But then it's this idea that I've given you like the most important part of me. I've given you my heart. Now I get to tell you, I get to own you a little bit. I get to tell you what to think, who to look at, what to
yeah,
do. And it's such a fantasy. It is so it's so detrimental, but it's we've sort of been, we've created that. And so to look at what you're saying is, you've got to look at this person as a real person. He's a man. He's going to be who's going to be. Can you deal with being with a man and be happy
and
the way he is?
and the realistic thing is what are all the men that came before him that go into making him the man that he is, right? Because if you come from a Viking lineage in an honor society where they do honor killings and all, that still has an impact today. If you came from a very submissive abnegation where everything is about martyrdom and Quaker type stuff, well, that still exists and still plays a role today. Robert Sapolsky has a book called Behave, which he goes over hundreds of thousands of years of biology, and it's like you're not getting away from that. And so some things are volitional. If you never explore these things and are honest, the old saying was the worst trick the devil played was convincing man he doesn't exist. Well, if you think about those things that we call devilish behavior, not devilish, they're just biological that we don't like. But if you don't believe they exist, you'll do nothing against them, and then they're going to come and sneak up on you, and you're going to be like, "Oh, I can't believe you did it." It's like, have you read a book? Like, wait, what? Like, I used to know this girl, and she's kind of jealous, and I didn't really care. But she would say things like, you know, um, your eyes linger over there. It's a little too long, didn't you? I was like, are you high? I don't. What are you timing me? I don't know. What's my heart rate variability? I don't know. And she was like, well, it just seems to me that if you need to say something, I'm like, I find it a little disingenuous that you're impugning me for something that you obviously the fuck did because you were looking over there too. And I know that you dress women down and look at their shoes and all this other shit, so you can do it perfectly. She's like, well, I don't want to fuck. I'm like, how do I know that? Maybe that's happened in my mind already. You don't know. You don't know.
In my mind, you already have. So I just want to let you know
That's possible. That's possible. But the truth is it's like, and now,
I gotta tell you, that's a beautiful way of ending this program, actually, with that image.
well, yes, I think so. But the truth is that there's a lot that makes us who we are as people. Most of it we don't know. And you go willy-nilly get in relationships and you start making hard and fast, and then life and reality is like, oh, by the way, it was never that way. You're crazy. And then you're feeling like a failure and all. And the only thing you failed at was to understand the real proposition you were getting into. Before we end though, I want to do this for our next episode. This isn't for this episode, but I want to give Arorah specifically because this is sort of women centric. But I want your opinion too, since you're a really good third party disinterested dude, Arthur. I want to give you this quote. I want you just to sit with it. Everybody else can sit with it too. But when we come back, I want your opinion on it because it can be read a million different ways, and I've read it a few different times, and it's come up. But it's something that I really want to talk about, and it can be a topic for our next one if you want. But I figure it'll give people time to think about it versus trying to formulate an idea on the fly. While we are, I like people to have their own thoughts. Maybe it facilitates. So here's how it goes. So listen. The bus stop skank. Wait, wrong one. Wrong one. That's it. That's a little poem I was writing. Never mind. What?
Reset.
Have we discussed enough about being a dick, Arthur, for you?
You know, yes, absolutely. And you know what I got from this actually? It was something you guys said and it synthesized for me. And Lau, I'm sorry, you're gonna say your quote in a sec, but I really, really loved what you said is look in the mirror and tell yourself I'm a dick.
Yes.
And
You
that's
are.
the beginning of this journey of losing all these dicks around you.
Yeah. If you just admit it and then figure out, okay, what increases it, what decreases it, you'll find that you're not sleeping enough, you're not eating properly, you're not resting, you're not getting play, you're not getting intimacy. And then you find all the things like you're caring too much what people think here. And so instead of working out, you're over there stewing and eating a chocolate chip because there's just a lot of things that feed into it. There's self-defeating behavior. So you can have the self-fulfilling prophecy of I'm just a dick. When you are a dick, but you're not just a dick. You're more than that. You've got more attributes. Dick's not all you can be. Be more.
What's the
If
quote?
you know you're a dick, then if you know that you're like have dickish behavior or whatever, you can just say, I'm moving into my dickhood and just kind of like, look at what you were just saying, Lau, like, where am I not getting my needs met? I think
Yeah.
that's really
What
Yeah.
you said was own your dick.
own your dick, be dick aware.
Speak truth to dick power. Speak truth to dick power. Stand in your dick truth.
How many times we should have a counter? Somebody count how many times we said dick in this.
I know. Yes, please put it below how many times we've said dick during this, and let us know. That would be fun. Yeah.
Okay.
Lau, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. What is your quote?
Yeah, let's hear that quote, Lau.
Okay. So listen, I'm gonna say it slowly. Women are near constantly preoccupied with their emotions in response to external stimuli. This inhibits external analysis, focusing it internally. Women will communicate how they felt from memory, eliciting further feelings, leading to a word by word disseminations of how she believes her feelings define her as she feels them. And so there is this continuous cycle of feelings eliciting further feelings, which a woman then needs to factor into her overall view of herself. Only with a conclusion rationalized to be emotively acceptable does she find relief. Such a conclusion is rarely ever the truth, but rather her rationalized chosen truth. A truth that reconciles negative and positive emotion to bring about an internal balance that is completely unconcerned with the abstraction that is objectivity.
Who's that a quote from?
I don't know the dude's name. It was actually sent to me by somebody who listened on my Dow in a minutes, and they put on there about women, and I saw this and I was like, I read it, and then I waited 5 minutes and I read it again, and I waited 10 minutes and read it again, and I got something every different time, and I was like, I don't know if it's a statement of fact. I don't know if it's an opinion. Like it's so many things you could read into it, but I don't know if they were the author or if they got it somewhere. But I thought to myself, this is something I would like to explore on the next adventure.
Email that or text it, please.
Yeah, I texted.
Give it all to us. Yeah, that would be very interesting to break down and explore, and
Because
and not dick explain.
It'd be interesting to also know where it came from, right? So if anybody is listening to this episode and you know where that particular passage came from, it'd be great to actually see it in
Was it
context.
written by a male? Was it written by a female? Was it written
I'll
by
say
a
probably
trans?
by a male. I'd almost say specifically.
ET.
It sounds like it was written by a male.
Maybe he's a cisgen heteronormie. You know those.
That's right. Well, I think those are some really great things to unpack, and I also think obviously none of us can be generalized, but there are there
Trend.
are traits that we have, and
The trends.
certainly in my experience, both as having a male and female child, growing up with all women, and working with mostly men, that I've had a lot of experience trying to see many different sides, and there are some things that are totally biological, and I would say there are things that are definitely social, but maybe not as much as we think.
Yeah.
It'd be wonderful to hear all those experiences
Yeah.
for the next episode. I look forward to it.
I
Yeah.
noticed that with a lot of the people that email us, or at least me anyways, they're mostly women. I think women do, this is a normal self-discovery process, and men typically don't go in this. So I don't want to make this, a Taoist Oprah channel, but at the same
Oh,
time,
but let's do. We would have so many views.
yeah, but the problem is we'd have so many views, and that's just asking for trouble.
I know that's not really what we're going for. Well, I think that's interesting, and also too, I would love to see how that feels to be a male in that looking at it that way, but also why isn't the males don't go in that place, go to that place, or do they, and they just go to it differently,
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think that's a wonderful quote. Let's rock with that next time. I guess I'm the one that is responsible for leading the discussion next time. So
Kind of why I picked it.
for that.
Awesome.
For that.
All right.
Okay,
Guys,
thank you guys.
thank you for
Have
listening.
a great day.
Yep.
Be well, you guys. Have a great week.
Hugs and kisses to you, Pink Parks.
Much love to you.